Well, hi everybody. I trust that you're all experiencing God's grace during this challenging time. I think everyone would agree that we've been and are still in a place of unprecedented tumult. We're currently experiencing a worldwide pandemic that has thrown people all over the world into panic, fear, confusion, pain, sickness, and poverty. Isn't it amazing that one little virus multiplied throughout the earth has brought this world, with all its sophistication, to its knees? Now we're faced with yet another lockdown, and people are thrown into despair, with questions being asked about the future. But for the Christian, although we don't know the answers to the future, we do know who holds the key to the future. In Psalm 93, at a time when there was a national crisis, the psalmist reminds God's people that the Lord reigns. I want to read the psalm to you. The Lord reigns. He is robed in majesty. The Lord is robed. He has put on strength as his belt. Yes, the world is established. It shall never be moved. Your throne is established from old. You are from everlasting. The floods have lifted up, O Lord. The floods have lifted up their voice. The floods lift up their roaring. Mightier than the thunders of many waters, mightier than the waves of the sea. The Lord on high is mighty. Your decrees are very trustworthy. Holiness befits your house, O Lord, forevermore. Derek Kidner refers to this psalm as the throne above the tumult. In verse 3, the psalmist speaks of the floods being lifted up. The floods here is a picture of chaos. He is using it as a metaphor for a national or personal crisis. And recently we have seen the chaos and destructions that come from floods. Derek Kidner again says that this refers to a hostile scene at ground level. And the psalmist, aware of this hostile scene and the feeling of being threatened at ground level, diverts our attention upwards. Upwards in verse 4 to see that the chaos caused and pictured by the floods is subject to a sovereign God who is the Lord on high and who is mighty. It is the Lord who reigns. It is the Lord on the throne above the tumult. And it is he who is robed in majesty. This word majesty means greatness. And J.I. Packer says, the word majesty, when applied to God, is always a declaration of his greatness and an invitation to worship. Here the psalmist is not only reminding the people of God of the sovereign rule of God when we're tempted to despair, but to also turn our hearts to worship. In the midst of the storm, the Lord reigns. In the midst of the pandemic, the Lord reigns. And he is reigning on his throne above the tumult. J.I. Packer writes this: his hand may be hidden, but his rule is absolute. When we're in the storm, this psalm encourages us to look away from ground level and instead look heavenward to see our sovereign God robed in majesty, seated on his throne, ruling all things, governing all the affairs of his creation. John Newton writes this: as Christians, we cannot be an unaffected spectator of national sins or events, nor without apprehension of their deserved consequences. He feels and almost trembles for others, but he himself dwells under the shadow of the Almighty, in a sanctuary that cannot be forced, and therefore, should he see the earth shaken and the mountains cast into the midst of the sea, his heart would not be greatly moved, For God is his refuge, the Lord reigns. He sees his Saviour's hand directing every dark appearance and overruling all to the accomplishment of his own great purposes. This satisfies him. And though the winds and the waves should be high, he can venture out in his own little boat in the storm, for he has an infallible and an almighty pilot on board with him. In this time of national crisis, let's take heed of the psalmist's words and do all we can to look away from the things at ground level and allow our focus and our trust to be in a sovereign God to steady ourselves in a storm.